The minute we started taking guns from people, we had that were quote unquote mentally unfit. We had lawsuits all over the place. We had a story we had the attorney come on the air, if you remember, shortly after Newtown, about a guy in Buffalo who had his guns taken away and said, "I am perfectly sane. This is ridiculous. This is so and so doesn't like me and this and that." All of a sudden, it got tied up in court. That's what we're going to go through. I don't think it's as simple as just saying we're going to take them away. But we'll talk about it. 315-736-0186. Bill in New Hartford, what's up?
Good morning. I'm not going to talk about the guns part, but I think this case with this kid in Florida is kind of similar to the one around here where that kid, what was it? What was it? His mother and sister.
Well, it was several, and that scene. You were on duty during that time.
I was.
Yeah.
And They had him up at the hospital in evaluation, and they let the kid out.
All right, interesting you bring that up, Bill. I'll talk to Steve Hauck on that. What are your thoughts? I mean,
well, remember
it's gruesome.
It's still being litigated, so I won't get into too much. But yeah, worst scene I've ever been on, and I've been on a lot of them. But again, that was a situation where law enforcement, I think, did everything they could, and the courts have determined that they did. Again, there's so much that can be done. And, I'm not going to vilify anybody. I think the court system will make the decision as to, who's responsible, who's not.
No guns in this situation, though, right?
No guns. No. It was a bad one.
It was a bad one.
Yep.
I don't know how bad. I mean, we've heard how bad. When law enforcement comes to you and says, believe me, you don't even want to know. It was that bad.
Sometimes not knowing something is better than knowing.
Yeah. So, all right. Would you say there's a comparison here?
Well, I think you got, a young guy who, commits murder and has got obviously some sort of mental thing going on there. And again, when it comes to the hospitals, they don't have the ability to commit everybody. That's the thing.
Well, we've cut way back on funding for mental health.
It's like telling the police, "We'll just arrest and put in jail everybody who commits a crime."
Right.
Not possible. Mm-hmm. It's just not possible. So I think they look at people.
How many people are in jail right now that are really mentally insane to some capacity?
Well, there's a lot of crossover there.
Yeah.
And again, you look at. And again, that's for people a lot smarter than me. But you look at people say they got to be crazy to do this, and I think that's the natural reaction. Mm-hmm. But I go back to it. Maybe they are in our determination, in our opinion, based on our life experiences. But to them, they're not.
Sure,
that's normal to them. That's normal behaviors to act out.
Even the kid. Apparently, this kid had come out and said, "I'm your school shooter.
I'm training to be a professional school shooter."
This kid had all sorts of.
But even flags. That statement alone will qualify you for a mental examination, but is not qualify you for being arrested.
Yeah, again, I'd like to know if he's had any involuntary commitments along the way.
How we had a story the other day. Remember, it was the story that ended up on Facebook about the hospital.
The planning board?
The planning board story.
I just wanted to ask you about that.
So you have the guy goes on Facebook and says, let's start with these three, killing these three. Did you read any of that?
I did.
So at the end of the day, not enough to arrest. It's free speech.
Right.
Yet there was another story that somebody had threatened to kill somebody else, and he was arrested for it. It might have been a public official.
Yeah, John Katko had a constituent that left a voicemail
and they
specifically
arrested
threatening to kill him and his family.
Over net neutrality.
Yeah.
So he was arrested. Where is the fine line?
Well, where the fine line, and first of all, I know most of the people on the planning board. They're all very, very nice people.
They're making so much money doing this.
Yeah, I know. They're really nice people that got told, okay, you're going to do this, and they're doing what they're supposed to do. So to be even threatened in any level is just wrong. Mm-hmm. But where the difference lies in is there's a direct threat that can be carried out. And I'll give you for an example.
Is it the difference that he said, these are the people that should be killed versus I'm going to kill these people?
He didn't make a direct threat, and I'll give you an example. If I were to call the radio station and I were to say, I'm going to launch a nuclear missile at your house, I don't have the ability to carry out
right.
a nuclear missile. It's not a real threat.
Yeah.
If I were to say, I'm going to come to the radio station when you get out of work, I'm going to be waiting in the parking lot for you, and you're going to be regretting it. That's a direct threat.
Okay.
I've said specifically, and I have the ability to carry it out.
You don't even have to say, I'm going to kill you.
No.
I'm going to be waiting in the parking lot for you, and you're going to regret it.
Right.
Okay.
So I think where the distinction lies in this particular case is he was making a generalized, hey, someone should do something about these people, that sort of thing.
How is that different? How is that different than
like
inciting violence in a or walking into a movie theater in the old classic?
I suspect if someone were to carry out some sort of crime against one of these people based on, with
you might be able to go back
with that comment as an impetus, he might find himself in some trouble.
There's a story today out there where, along this same line, where there's an NFL player from Pittsburgh that went after. Anybody read this story? I pulled it out this morning because I thought it was interesting and it fits right in here. So, apparently, a kid went on Instagram and a Pittsburgh Steeler, an NFL player, actually ridiculed the kid and made fun of the kid and did all of this stuff. See if you can look up the story. He's the NFL player is now being sued for bullying, internet bullying, or something like that. Again, it's so interesting how you can say A, B, and C, but then over here, if you say this, it is not a crime. It's just free speech.
Well, again, we talked about this in terms of the Second Amendment. Is the First Amendment is not absolute. There are limitations to free speech. Sure. There's not many, but there's a few.
The Second Amendment as well.
Right. There's a few. So, the courts have determined this. So, over the years, the courts have had to look at these cases and look at them and say, hey, I think that's... In New York State, this happened. So, few years ago, I say few years ago, I'm dating myself. This probably goes back 15 years ago. Yeah. We used to have a crime, which is still in the books, called aggravated harassment. And it used to be, literally, if you use any sort of telecommunication, use a phone, in the internet, text message, anything like that other than in person, you make a threat against someone, it's a crime. That's it. Doesn't matter whether you have the ability to carry it out. You make a threat against somebody, that's a crime. Well, they changed that. The courts have come in and said, wait a minute. You have to have the ability to carry the thing out. It has to be a real threat that, the person, and the person has to fear it.
Right.
In other words, they have to be, I'm not scared of that guy. It's not a crime. But, if they have a real fear and the person has the ability to carry it out, then that's considered a crime. But they changed that. They made that distinction a while back.
Yeah. Did you find that story?
I did, yeah. So, Sean Davis, a safety for the Steelers, put up a Snapchat video, and this was a picture I guess he found online. It was of a kid waiting in line at Chick-fil-A, okay? And he made the comment that Chick-fil-A got little kids. This kid, like 8 years old, no wonder the lines be so long at Chick-fil-A. Now, what was offensive to the kid is that he's a teenager and he's small in stature.
Okay. And now the kid's being picked on.
The kid was picked on at school, bullied at school, and they said, well, look, you're 15 or whatever, and this guy said, you look like you're 8. So he's being sued. And the guy's saying, the lawyer for the player is saying, we didn't know he was 15. We really thought he was a kid. We weren't trying to make fun of him.
And I hate to say, with these social media platforms, you're putting yourself out there. At 15 years old, you're putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
I mean, the parents are allowing the kid to put himself out there.
I want to, if it's okay, just bear with me for a second. I was kind of debating in my head whether I wanted to tell this story, something that happened to me personally in college, and it goes back to what you had talked about I think, kind of the difficulties that the mental health system has. So it was before this big dance in college, and for whatever reason, I had either had too much to drink or somebody slipped me something, but I had lost my memory almost instantly.
Okay.
And I didn't think I had that much to drink. So the whole night was a blur, total blackout. I only remember a few images. I remember waking up in the hospital, and I looked up. My mom was there, and I said, well, "What happened?" And they said, "Well, you were really drunk, and the police got called, and you were brought here by police."
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, they wheel me down this hallway, and they bring me in, and they bring me into the psych ward in the Syracuse hospital. I said, what in the heck's going on? And they would not let me leave. I could not leave until I saw a doctor. They wouldn't tell me anything. I said, what in the world happened? Apparently,
you have no memory
no memory whatsoever. So apparently I had gotten so inebriated that I was threatening my own life.
Okay.
And and at the time I had all my issues have been resolved. I was like, no way would I ever do that. But because I was for some reason, whether it was a threat of getting in trouble for being drunk, I was saying, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to kill myself. So the only way that I was allowed to leave the mental ward of the hospital was after finally talking with somebody. I had to sign the AMA, which is against medical advice, which you're choosing to leave the mental ward against the doctor's advice. So basically,
which is probably something they're covering their.
Right, exactly.
This gets into involuntary commitment and stuff like that.
Right. So I guess my whole point in sharing that is whether it be a suicidal threat or a homicidal threat, it puts the mental health facility or the hospital in a tough position if during my circumstance where it's not really a credible threat because I was inebriated and for whatever reason I was saying that, but they don't know that. So what's the difference between that, somebody that says, I'm going to kill myself, you have to bring them to a mental institution or a mental hospital and have them stay there? Couldn't the same thing go for somebody like in this case where if he even had threatened a homicidal action to anybody that he would have to go into that mental facility for a certain specific amount of time?
Yeah, that's a good question. So under the mental health law, the section of law that the police use to temporarily admit someone for evaluation is called 9.41.
Mm-hmm. Because I remember specifically, I was not brought by ambulance. That was one of the few memories I had of the night. I remember being cuffed and put in the back seat of the car.
There's another section of that same law. It's called 22.09. And what that says is that if someone is incapacitated other than mental, in other words, alcohol or drugs or some other unknown mental incapacitation, or physical, we can physically take them into custody, make it a custodial arrest, take them to the hospital, because essentially it says, and we used to do these with bath salts, because if you think about these bath salts people, they don't talk to you. You have no idea, but they're off the wall.
And this is kind of what happened in the Bumble case, right? He was brought to the hospital.
Well, a little bit different, right. That was under 941. But you can do this, in other words, we used to do this, unfortunately, many times on Varick Street. Mm-hmm. You get St. Patrick's Day, right? Kids come down, they're out of their mind drunk, they're stumbling around. Who are you with? I don't know. Where's your car? I don't know. Who's your friends? I don't know. You don't know. You can't leave them by themselves.
Yeah, because it could end badly.
There's no such thing as a drunk tank anymore. Mm-hmm. So what do? You take them into custody, you send them to the hospital under the section 2209. The hospital evaluates them and realizes it's just high alcohol intoxication. They treat them. They get a hold of family eventually as the person sobers up. They realize there's nothing else other than you got really drunk.
They let them go.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And that, do you believe, is what happened with Andrew? Most likely.
I think that's probably what it was. Yeah. If you looked at it, you probably had a 2209 situation.
Yeah.
You've lived this. You obviously know this. But, I mean, just in having this conversation, it just seems like something is not right when you find someone on Varick Street who's intoxicated but isn't in any harm and isn't threatening anyone, but they don't know their name and they don't know where they are. They end up in a hospital. Someone who makes the threats like this shooter did doesn't have a hospital interaction.
A call from
it just seems like there's something.
The problem,
right? It does.
The problem that we have is you probably all know someone who you might be saying, man, if there's anybody that's ever going to do something crazy, it's old Joe Blow.
Yeah.
But Joe Blow never does anything. Goes through his entire life, makes stupid mistakes, does this, does that, but never goes in and shoots up a school or anything like that. Where the danger comes in is how are we supposed to look into the crystal ball and know that this crazy person is going to act and all these crazy people over here aren't going to. That's where it becomes difficult. We just can't round everybody up and put them in institutions. That went away back in the early 60s. And
in the hospitals, I don't want to be in the hospitals.
They can't
do it, right. Yeah. And the other thing you have to wonder.
Nor can our jails. And
can't handle that.
It is, I just believe we need to look at these situations like this is isolated. It's horrible. We're not going to legislate it away. We got to be better in communicating. Agencies should communicate. Can we get better? But ultimately saying we're going to prevent this from ever happening, boy, we're living. I really, truly believe we're living in a fantasy world. If somebody wants to do harm,
and the other thing is
they're gonna do some in some capacity. They're going to be able to do some harm.
And you do wonder, with so many incidents in which the police responded, if it almost cops are human beings just like everybody else,
right? Yeah.
And we're certainly not perfect, and we make plenty of mistakes. You wonder if they didn't get to the house after the 10th time and said, he doesn't seem so bad today. He's been way worse and didn't do anything. He's not so bad today, so he'll be okay. You almost wonder if there wasn't a little bit of that going on, that it was so many times.
Well, let me ask you this. Do we know, because I know someone, do we know of someone who has multiple times, over and over again, I'll bet you, if you talk to any police agency, especially in a city the size of Utica or larger, that there is always this group of people, we went over to so-and-so's house again.
I don't even think I have to leave the room.
Right. That's a good point. I got to go over to that studio again. The crazy deviants are going nuts.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's the problem.
You literally know these people on a first-name basis.
That's exactly. So at what point are we supposed to predict, law enforcement supposed to predict, family members supposed to predict that this is the time the person's going to crack and actually cause harm?
And listen,
it's a real problem.
The vast majority of those people are never going to commit a crime against anyone. They might hurt themselves, but they're never going to commit a crime against anyone.
That's what makes this so
I think we need to
see
more, and I think what needs to happen is we look at these incidents, and unfortunately they occur way too often.
Yeah.
We look at them, and then a few months later, our memory's not so good. We can't remember the name, the guy's name, and then we can't remember where it happened, and then we'll talk about it 5 years down the road, and you can remember 2 or 3 of them. I think what needs to happen is you need to look at these cases, at whether the person takes their own life or is killed by police or is taken into custody in this case, and look at the whole, and not for purposes of placing blame, pointing fingers, you screwed up, you did this, you should have done that. Look at the whole thing and evaluate the person's life and say, where in here is there some sort of characteristic that was missed by someone that we've got to be picking up on?
Sure.
And we're going to teach our teachers and our hospital staff and our law enforcement to be on the lookout for this. And if you see this, it's a huge red flag.
Because there seemed to be enough where, the kid's running around saying he's the next school shooter.
Yeah.
There's enough here that's different than the guy pulling a fire alarm somewhere or threatening to hurt himself or something like that. But you're right. We're not focusing on... everybody's getting political and focusing on the gun.
Right.
We really need to look at the system, the warning signs, the mental illness, and how can you tell when somebody's gonna crack?
Or at the very least, if you're going to look at doing something with guns, you have to look at all those other equally.
Sure.
Because the gun didn't walk in there itself and kill those kids.
Lieutenant Hauck, awesome hour. I appreciate you taking the time, because it brought in some bit of expertise to this whole thing, which we do not bring. So I appreciate it. Got a break.